Hi guys, in today's video we're looking at this all new Bachmann locomotive, retooled Lner V2 class. And it's recently been released to the public, and this code is 35-200 Lner V2 class number 4791, lined Lner green original, and it takes a 21 pin decoder if you want to DC fit it and sound and all the rest of that good stuff. So let's get into it and see what it's all about, shall we, and see if it's worth the money and has it got any hidden features. Starting off at the detail bag that you get on this new locomotive, you get the usual stuff from Bachmann. You get quite a lot of stuff there. You get the doors for the locomotive. These some already added to the cab. You also get some brake rigging as well for the loco and tender. You also get some other stuff to go on top of the tender for fireman tools. There's lamps in there, there's drain carts, there's all sorts, and a spare set of wheels as well. There is one thing missing from mine, and that is the plastic rod that couples the tender and loco, which you'll find out later on. That is missing. I've waited a week, it hasn't turned up. We're finding that you get quite a lot of stuff. As we move on to the front of the locomotive now, this locomotive does have metal sprung buffers, and the heads to the buffers are thick and the rod going in is really thin. They are there, they're sprung but pointless in double O in my opinion. The housing for the buffers themselves are in black. The buffer beam itself is in red with some lining, I think it's white, black and white. We also have the number of the locomotive and we have the classification. The number of the locomotive is 4791. We also have a hole for detail parts as well. We go down a little bit more, we do have a small tension lock coupling as well there, an AM1. Moving on up, we have at least 3 lamp irons. We also have some bracing as well for the boiler, for the neck that is there. We also have hundreds of rivets all over this locomotive, wherever you look, they are there too. Separate plied smoke box dart. We also have a handrail at the top and another lamp iron as well. We don't have anything picked out on the front, it's just a plain black livery, and we also have a chimney too. As we move on to the side of the locomotive, both sides are different. We'll start with this side first. As you can tell, this side does have a metal reversing rod just underneath the chassis, I want to call it, or the walking board for the crew. That is metal and that is a fantastic touch. The wheel configuration for this locomotive is a 262 and it is a Gretley design. All the linkage and stuff and all the rods are in the metal and they are shiny as well. It does off-put some, but I quite like it. The cylinders too are in apple green with some lining as well. The axles, I believe, have black coverings on them as well. As we look towards underneath the cab, it does have some red lining, and we can pick out some springs and axle boxes and other stuff as well as some steps, and it is metal and it is nice. As we move on to the livery of the locomotive, the livery of this locomotive is apple green with white, black and white lining. We do have a thin handrail going all the way around. We also have a steam pipe, I believe, going around as well. There is some lubrication box and sanding boxes on top of the walking board for the crew. Then we have some washout plugs as well. Like I said, both sides are different. On this side, we don't have any parts on the walking board for sanding or lubrication as far as I am aware. We also don't have a steam pipe. What we do have is a handrail going round, which is metal. There's also a step at the front of the locomotive near the buffers. They're on both sides as well. They're already applied by Bachmann. As we move along to the cab, the cab itself is in apple green with the lettering and the font of the Lner. Again, the number is 4791. We also have a builder's plate as well and a few washout plugs. We also have glazing in the cab and a wood effect or a chrome effect going around the windows too. There's a lining and some handrails as well, and then we get to the cab roof. There also is a guard to stop the water or things splashing in the crew's face when they lean out the windows as well. On DC or analog, there is a glow in the firebox, but you have to open the doors first. There's only a glow on analog. On DC fitted, it's more of a flicker. We have to open the doors to see it really. If the doors are shut, you can't really see it. So on this model, you do get opening smoke box doors inside the cab, like so. And again, like so. And they shut as well. Bit pointless in my opinion, but it's a nice touch, and yes, I've scratched mine. As we move on to the part most people look forward to in the review, and that's the detail cab that a modern locomotive has. And this one does have a highly detailed cab. Most things in there are painted, and there's a few other gadgets as well. We have waters in the gauges. We also have numbers on the dials, and it is painted and does have the correct thing. Some of the stuff is moulded and just painted over, but that's how it is. Moving on to the front of the tender. The front of the tender does have a few separately applied parts. I think there's a few fireman tools there as well, and I believe there's a chute too and a few cupboards. It's highly done. It's what you expect from a modern day locomotive. As we move on to the tender now, the tender is in the same livery as the locomotive, which you expect. It's apple green with white, black and white lining. We also have the LNER font with a gold with a back head to it, which is crisply applied, may I add. We also have handrails. We also have a door as well added to the tender. We don't have one on the cab. As we move down a little bit, as we get to the chassis of the tender, as I want to call it, the middle wheel is a bit farther back than it is compared to the front wheel, and that is correct. We do have that red lining on here as well, which we had on the chassis as well underneath the cab. We also have axle boxes and springs, crisply moulded, and I believe it is metal as well. It's highly detailed. There's not much to look at, so I do apologise. As we move on to the back of the tender does have sprung buffers, and I believe they are metal, like I said, on the front. We also have the housing for the buffers as well in black. We also have the buffer beam itself in red. A few holes as well for detail parts. We also have a small tension lock coupling down below. Moving on up, we have 3 lamp irons along the running board. We also have some lining as well, which is white, black and white. We have a step, we have a handrail, and we have some sort of water capacity badge as well, or plaque. And then we have another lamp iron at the top. But we do have handrails either side of the tender too. As we do a bird's eye view on top of the tender now, starting the usual places, we do have the tender top in black. It also has a cylinder and a water filler cap. There's some mouldy stuff there too, like places where you tie chains to and stuff like that, and a few rivets. They all are there. Then we have a circle thing with a wall or bracing thing down the middle of it. Moving along, we come to the coal load. The coal load itself is plastic and it is removable. I thought it when I did it die cast, but that's how it is. It looks the part, doesn't look too bad. If you move the coal load itself, there is some sort of chute with lots of rivets inside there, and it's good back when we went to that sort of trouble where it looks the part as well. You can also see some fireman tools there as well as you get towards the cab. Now we do an aerial view on top of the locomotive. Starting in the usual places, which is the cab roof. The cab roof is in black. There's a few rivets there as well. There's vents which don't move. They're open and shut, partly by looks of it. We also have a rain duct as well, which goes straight. That's in black too. The safety valves themselves are metal. The little whistle is in plastic. You can also see some lining as well round the cab roof, which looks fantastic as well. As you move along to the boiler area, the boiler itself does have a seam line down there with a few rivets. It's more noticeable on the banjo dome. I don't know if that's correct or not, but that's how it is in model form. Once you know it, it's there. It's a little bit hard to see, but in some lights you can't see it. Like I said before, the livery is apple green. We also have the white, black and white banding or lining on the boiler, with a few washout plugs and handrails dotted around. As we move along to the beginning of the locomotive, I want to say, we do have, I think, a superheater and a few other stuff there as well. It's in black. I also think the chimney, you might be able to fit a smoke generator if you really wanted to, and then we get to sprung buffers and that sort of stuff as well at the end. As we do an underneath look at this locomotive, starting off at the front pony truck or trailing wheel, whatever you want to call it. This one here, I do believe there is pickups on it with that metal strip going across. If not, the loco doesn't need it because it runs pretty well without it by the looks of it. But I could be wrong and there could be pickups on there somewhere. Moving along to the driving wheels, we do have at least 3 or 4 screws to take off to get to the base plate. I'm not sure if it's copper strips or contacts or hardwired. I think it's probably contact strips. The wheels themselves are in metal. And if you look around, you can see a few springs, modern springs and stuff that the loco would have. The wheels themselves, like I said, are metal. They do have copper strips, pickups, at least the driving wheels do. Anyway, all 6, which is good, does the job, and easy to clean. As we move along to underneath the cab there is a flangeless wheel which pivots. In the detail bag there is a flange one. If you wanted to swap it out, you just take the 2 screws off and do it that way. It's quite easy. There's a few detail parts to add, like the brake rigging and stuff on this locomotive. As we move along to the tender and the loco and tender connection, it's the new Bachmann one, which I'll get onto after this part of the video. But the tender itself does have pickups on the front wheel and the back wheel. Again, like I said before, there is the middle wheels have been moved backwards like they should do on the locomotive, that is correct. But the axles themselves are plastic with metal contacts either side on the wheels for the pickup. We also have a water scoop in there as well, and then we have a small tension lock coupling too. Again, you have the brake rigging in the detail bag if you wanted to add it. And finally, we move on to how to uncouple the loco and tender. You should get a tool in the detail bag, but as you can tell, mine has not come in the detail bag, and at the point of recording this, it has not arrived. So I'm using an alternative thing. So what you do is you slot it in the gap there and twist. And just pull and it comes away. And finally we come to how to connect the loco and tender back together again. As you can see, we have 4 prongs on there. We have 4 holes in there, and they should, saying what Bachmann says, just push together. It is a little, and there we go, it's gone in. Was a little awkward, and I do apologise about the way I've done this. It's the best I know, and Bachmann haven't sent me the correct tool to do it. So yeah, that's it on the tracks, guys. So next up will be the usual points test, second radius and all the rest. Normal Bachmann locomotives can't do second radius on mine. Some can, some can't, most of them can't. So it'll be interesting to see if this retooled locomotive can, and if Bachmann has improved it at all. Stumbled a little there. We're talking 20. Yeah, for some reason it doesn't like that point, but playing that, it's not too bad. At least it can do second radius points. So yeah, I managed that pretty well, I'll be honest with you. It did slow down on the points test, but in practice it didn't. When I practiced before I recorded, it didn't slow down. A little bit strange, but it can make it. It did not too bad. Next up will be some slow speed, and I'll find it a train to pull. So here goes. Again, 20, 15. Doesn't like slow speed on corners. Not a problem, we'll just give it a bit more realistic speed. And this is on DC. So yeah guys, that's the end of the running session. But before I give my opinion, I'll show you what it ran with, which is just some random freight. A mixture of all sorts in there as well. And it is going tender first for something different. There's a few YouTubers out there that have done coaches and have done it loco first. So I thought it'd be a little bit different, a little bit odd. So my opinion on this model, it's definitely a lot better than the upgraded chassis that Bachmann released a few years ago of the V2. And it's night and day, basically chalk and cheese. It's a lot better. Very impressed with it. It possibly could be the best Bachmann loco to date, in my opinion. Currently, the Cali 812 is the best Bachmann, in my opinion, but this probably is just slightly beaten it. There is a few pointless things or features in this model, in my opinion. Please, I must stress it's only my opinion. One is sprung buffers. I find them pointless. The second one is doors in the cab. They are pointless. Yes, I scratched mine, that's my own fault, but they are pointless. And the flicking firebox, if you've got the doors and you have to shut the doors and the glow or the flicking firebox isn't really working because you can't see it because the doors are shut and you don't know the door's open, then it's pointless. And finally, the connection between loco and tender, I'm not too keen on it. It's slightly better than the Bachmann old style where you had a hook and you just hoped it was in place. It is better than that. They should have really gone for something more of a rapide style, what they did with the Sterling single, where you just push the two pins together and that was it. There's nothing holding it in place. That's how Rapide did theirs and works pretty well. Or do something a bit more like Hornby or Dapple, where it's permanently connected through screws or through a chip of some description. Yeah, they work, but it is a little bit delicate. If you uncouple it, which is a hassle, to do some work or do something in there, and you put it back together, make sure it is connected back properly, because sometimes it's not and it doesn't run. So that's the only issue with it. The money I paid for it was £195 from Kerno Model Shop, and at the point of me doing this review, I still not received the plastic rod to uncouple it, so I had to use a screwdriver, and I wouldn't recommend using a screwdriver because metal and plastic doesn't really go. So guys, that was my opinion on the new Bachmann Lner V2. Hope you enjoyed the video, and hopefully I will see you in the next one. So please take care and goodbye.